Hi my friend, in this video we're going to be making throwback tech house bass inspired by Mr. Belt and Wezol's song, It's Not Right, But It's Okay. And we're going to find out if we can do this in under 20 minutes by using the 80-20 rule of tech house bass production. What you're listening to right now is the song that we'll be working on, and what you're looking at now is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on. In particular, we're going to focus on this bass group right here, and we're going to go over things in the order that I created them so that you can follow along when you're creating basses for your tracks. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video because we'll be doing a full recap of the 80-20 rule so that you can finish songs faster just like this. Because all in all, it only took about 20, maybe 25 minutes for me to recreate the bass here, including the pattern and the sound design and all that. And this whole song, fully mixed, mastered, arranged, and ready to go, only took about 6 hours of time. So if finishing songs faster is something you would like help with, I made you a free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish one new song like this every single week. Just to visit the link that's on screen now or in the description to grab the Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit for free. And if you'd like to take things to the next level, you can also find a link to this video's project files in the description as well. With that said, let's jump into this. Alright. So when it comes to the bass, one of the first things, as usual, is to make sure that you have the reference track actually in your project file. And you can just turn it off and you can map the S key. So you can flick back and forth between what you're working on and the reference track. And this is going to help you in several ways, as you're going to find out here as we slowly unfurl this 80-20 rule. So one of the first things I like to go over is let's start track by track. So I'm just going to set up the first bass layer that we have. And let's start by going over the MIDI. So let's take a look at this. So I'm not super music theory master man or anything like that. What I can say is what I did do is you can see here that the track's in here and you can extend it left and right. That's because I consolidated this piece here, which you can do by grabbing a piece and then pressing Command J or Control J. And then I just dragged it into the empty MIDI clip, and then Ableton basically made a bunch of nonsense. So I can just quickly show you what that looks like. So you just consolidate like this, you drag it into like the MIDI, and then convert to audio. I selected MIDI like this, and then basically it gave me, you know, something similar. I think if we let me just try something. You can see, not perfect, but it kind of gets you in the ballpark, especially if you're not like a super music nerd, I guess. And then so once that was in there like that, basically I just kind of cleaned everything up and then started adjusting things by ear and flicking back and forth between what I'm working on and the reference track to make sure to get the notes correctly. Some of the cool things I noticed is that there's like a lot of these really quick succession notes like that, which is like barely almost triggering like a note. It's almost creating like a ghost note, kind of like a little percussive kind of sound. Really cool aspect of the bass line there. And then the other thing that I would mention is if you look at this bass line, what I basically did is the first 16 bars plays like this, and then the second 16 bars plays like this. And I just color coded to show there's a difference, but there's like barely a difference. It's just like I moved one of the notes at some point, so there's just like some subtle changes happening over time is what I was going for. So that's a decent look at the notes. For the most part, I would say, I don't know, screenshot that or something, or grab the project files. But then the other thing is moving on, once you have the right notes compared to the reference track, the next thing to move into is the right sound selection. So what I usually like to do is I like to work with multiple tracks in the bass. So I usually have a sub track and then I have another track for the mid bass. The idea is the sub is going to take care of all like the low end and make sure that like the fullness of the track is sounding nice and full. And that way you can have a separate track that's taking care of the mid bass, which is going to be more of like the character and the grit and like that sound design. That way you can focus on the sound design of the bass without worrying about like making any changes that are going to mess up the low end, because the low end is on a completely separate track. In addition to that, by using a sub while you're just writing, it's similar to creating your bass line using like a piano or a guitar. It's a very simple sound. You can focus on the notes without getting too bogged down by the sound design or anything like that. So that's kind of the rationale behind that. In terms of the actual sound, I have this little rack that I've made or whatever called the V Sub 2. And basically it's just the operator device playing some sine waves for the most part, with options to add in different kinds of saturation Saturation helps fill up the sound. It adds a bit of grit and character, and like it's gonna add that extra harmonics that will help make the sub sound like cut through crappy speakers and stuff like that. In addition to that, bringing up this scoop in the mid end a little bit here, and then I have this one knob sidechain device, which is just I'm gonna get into that. I'll get into that right now. Basically, what that is Ableton Shaper device mapped to a rate of quarter notes, so it's pulling down the gain in quarter notes using this shape, and quarter notes are usually what the kick drum's playing, right? So you don't have to do all that, like grab a compressor, route it, change like the attack and all that to get like a simple pumping sidechain sound. This way, it's all with one knob like that. And then I do have a volume here just in case I need it, and then as you can see here, it's automated, so just at different points in the song I'm using this to cut out the sub so that just the mid bass remains as like a kind of a little arrangement trick. And then lastly, I'm rolling off a bunch of the highs with an auto filter, getting rid of some of that high end, so it's mostly just the sub, taking care of the sub on the sub track. Then next up we have this bass guitar sound, so let's have a look and listen to that. Let me turn it off and on and soloed. You can hear soloed, it sounds absolutely awful, but the idea is it is meant to blend in with the sub track there. And so first thing is, in terms of the notes, the MIDI, there's no MIDI here, as you can see. The thing that I usually like to do is, instead of having it's set to all ins like this, which means that if you're looking at the mouse, I hope, over here on the track on all ins, that means it's going to look at whatever MIDI is on the track. But over here, if you can see, I set that to subs, which means that it's going to look for the MIDI not on this track, but instead on the subs track. And this way, if you make any changes to the sub sound at any point, or if you like want to cut out the bass completely at one point, you don't have to cut it out here and here. It's just going to follow along, and it just makes it a lot easier, I think, because you're trying to treat it as one cohesive instrument. So that's how the notes is taken care of. Another big thing that I always do is I make sure I have the Ableton pitch device, because that way, say if what sounds good for the sub might not sound good for the mid bass, so you might want to go up an octave, down an octave, up 2 octaves. Like it can really depend. And in this case, I'm going up 1 octave. Then I'm running this into this Trillion Chapman device, which is basically Ableton sampler. I sampled a bunch of notes from one of my favorite bass sounds, but didn't want to keep loading up that VST every time. So I just threw it into a sampler device here, and you can grab this if you want as well. Basically, it's just a cool bass guitar sound that I really like, and it's usually my go-to mid bass sound. So that's a cool way in your end too. If you have your own like signature mid bass sound or bass guitar or some kind of analog synth or something like that, it could be a cool way to add kind of that through line between all your tracks, so that you have a signature sound that's slowly developing. Even these subtle things like that can really add towards a signature sound. Yeah, in terms of any processing, we're using the circuit distortion here on just increasing some drive, 7 decibels, quite a bit. And then I'm also playing a little bit with the envelope here, so I'm bringing down sustain a bit, so it's just making it a bit tighter against the sub sound, trying to glue it together in a way, make it kind of cohesive. Then another big thing is when you're working with sub and mid bass tracks. On the mid bass track, you're going to want to remove a whole bunch of the low end, so I have things cut at 153 hertz here. This is making sure that the sub is taking care of all the low end, and you're not having like overlapping frequencies with like your mid bass track and getting things to sound all muddy. Simple stuff there. And then I am removing a bunch of the highs on this with a low pass filter. Sometimes I use a high shelf, sometimes I use a low pass filter. In this case, it's a low pass. The high shelf can sometimes sound more natural, but sometimes with basses it does sound good to have that, because it's like actually pretty normal if you think about it. Like synthesizers always have like that like low pass sound, low pass filter to them. So I don't know why I was rambling about that, sorry. But yeah, I'm cutting it 2 kilohertz there. Just getting rid of some of like the high end, or else this is what it sounds like with it off. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's like adding all this wobbiness and too much high end. Yeah, that's a big thing there. Then I'm running it into this one knob width plugin, which is just the free Polyverse wider plugin, super sick plugin, and I've just mapped the main knobs here to an Ableton rack, so you don't have to open up the plugin and waste time with that. It's just quickly adjust things to taste and move on. So you can see here, just using some of the width, it's just making that mid bass sound a bit more stereo, pushing it to the left and right, and yeah, that way the subs is taking care of the center there. Then what we are running into next is this one knob sidechain rack. So very similar to how I had it built into that V-sub one. This is just one that I have attached to every single one of my audio and MIDI tracks. This whole channel strip here rather actually is set up like that. And this is creating some pumping, which is like cool, vibey stuff, but also it's making room for the kick as well, which is a big thing in dance music. And then we're also running into, this is just an Ableton saturation device. So bringing up some of the saturation, which is kind of filling up the sound a little bit more. And yeah, adding a little bit of grit and character to the bass sound as well. Yeah, that's a look at the bass for this one. So next we'll do a quick like 80-20 rule deep dive on the bass here. But before we do that, I want to mention that this video is sponsored by our good friends over at Rocket Powered Sound. The kick and the clap and some of the snare samples, or actually no, some of the hi-hat samples that you hear in the drums here, that's kind of like laying it down for the bass, is from their Ultimate Sample Pack, which is a massive sample pack filled with over 1,000 usable and iconic sounds. And as a special bonus, what you can do is get 30% off of that Ultimate Sample Pack. Just visit the link that's on screen now or in the description, and be sure to use the coupon code UltimateBestFriends to get 30% off. Thank you again to Rocket Powered Sound for hooking up our community like this. And with that said, let's jump back into the 80-20 rule for this vid. Hi, my friend. Matt from Best Friends Club here, and if you've been paying attention, then you probably have already figured out what the 80-20 rule is when it comes to building out your basses. So the goal here is to get 80% of the result with only 20% of the time, energy, or effort. And because the first key to the 80-20 rule of bass is to use a reference track, we're making sure that we're very easily hitting 80% of a very professional sounding track. In particular, we focus on nailing the notes that our bass is playing, the sound design of our bass, as well as the volume of our bass track compared to that reference track. This just keeps things fast and super focused. The second key of the 80-20 rule here is to layer your basses so that you have the maximum amount of control over your bass's melody, low end, and the character or vibe. The third and final key is to repurpose your old projects by adding old project files, racks, and entire groups to your Ableton collection folder. By creating a suite of powerful templates, Ableton racks, and one knob effects that you've personalized and curated over time, it's going to make sure that you get a higher quality result faster. If you'd like to get a head start by downloading all the racks, templates, and all the files that you've seen me use in the Ableton project file for this video, or if you'd just like to take a closer look at any of the techniques or tracks you saw me work on in this video at your own pace, you can find a link to this video's project files on screen now and at the second link that's in the YouTube description. I'm recreating a different song from the Beatport top charts every single week and making the project files available to anyone who wants them. You'll also get access to a private Discord where you can ask me and the community questions, as well as share tracks for feedback. If you or your music are not quite ready for a shot in the arm like that, I've also made you a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that have helped me figure out how to completely finish one new song each and every single week. And you can grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit by visiting the first link that's in the YouTube description here. However, if you just feel like staying on YouTube for now, that's totally fine. Save that link for later and check out this playlist of videos where I remake basses from other songs from the Beatport top charts. Or if you want to take what you learned in this video to the next level, definitely check out this video right here.